The body of Diego Maradona, the Argentine legendary footballer who died on Wednesday, has arrived at the presidential palace in Buenos Aires for a public tribute. Hundreds of people gathered outside the building for hours to pay respect to Maradona. The Argentine president also declared 3 days of national mourning. Maradona died at the age of 60 at his home in the town of Tigre after suffering a cardiac arrest. He is regarded as one of the greatest players in the history of football. He scored 34 goals in 91 appearances for Argentina, representing the country in 4 World Cups. He became a household name after steering his country to the World Cup glory in 1986. Football stars including Pelé, Lionel Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo have paid tribute to the Argentine icon. Danny Shaw is a professor of Latin American and Caribbean studies, and he joins us now out of New York. Danny, it's good to see you. Professor, no doubt one of the greatest footballers of all time. What legacy does he leave behind?
A great footballer and a great human being who came from a shanty town outside of Buenos Aires, born in 1960 to really nothing. Representative of the forgotten masses of South America, of the wretched of the earth. We have to remember that in 1982, the English Empire wages a war known in Spanish as La Guerra de las Malvinas, or the Falkland Wars against the Argentinian people. A horrific war where on each side hundreds of soldiers lost their lives, and many veterans would go on to commit suicide. But Diego Maradona is coming of age during this war, and this war radicalizes him as it radicalizes the masses of people across Latin America against Margaret Thatcher, who's then supported by Ronald Reagan. So in 1986, when you have the semifinal game in the World Cup between England and Argentina, the soccer pitch becomes a battlefield, or an extension of the battlefield. And that warm July day in Mexico City is when Diego Maradona very heroically and historically has the Mano de Dios goal, where he, in a very crafty way, taps it in using his hand, and then moments later sprints through a minefield of English defenders and scores what would become known as the goal of the century. So here we see the connection between these big macro political in this game that so many people across the oppressed countries and of course South America love, the game of football or soccer.
Absolutely. And just touching further on that famous 1986 game, in his autobiography, he said the victory over England in the 1948, in the 1986 rather World Cup semi-final, which followed the Falklands War, as you said, or the Malvinas War, was like beating a country, not a football team. And he says, we knew that a lot of Argentine kids had died in the Malvinas War, that the British mowed us down like little birds. So he expressed his anti-colonial ideology, as you say. Can you expand on that just a bit further?
Yeah, there was a very telling incident in 2000 when Maradona travels to Japan. But Japan has these archaic, strict laws that if you've ever been involved with drugs, then you're not allowed into the country. So he's rejected at the country, but always a spokesperson, a tribune of the people. Maradona says, how hypocritical of the Japanese. They're going to reject me, a sick and suffering human being, but the gringos, the Yankees, the imperialists who dropped 2 nuclear bombs, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, killing hundreds of thousands, they don't deny them visas. So he was always very quick with his thoughts, with his consciousness. There's another anecdote. He shortly after went to Cuba to get help with his drug addiction problem. It's no secret that he had a lot of personal struggles. And it was in Cuba where he was helped directly by Fidel Castro and the Cuban authorities. And this is when he was won over and had a deep appreciation of the Cuban Revolution. because he felt that Fidel was genuine and they were genuinely trying to help him with his addiction and these problems that so many politicians and that the rich countries had forgotten about, and how many millions of people across the world suffering from these problems. So it's that 2000 visit to Cuba that leads to his relationship to the Bolivarian Revolution, the big showdown in El Rio de la Plata between Uruguay and Argentina, when Hugo Chavez famously embraces Diego Maradona in front of tens of thousands of cheering Argentinians. The Venezuelans had recently paid off the foreign debt of Argentina. And that's when Hugo Chavez famously says, El que no brinque es Yankee. If you don't jump up and down, then you are down with the imperialists. You are with the Yankees. And Maradona is in the middle of this pink tide, of this incredible momentum shift across Latin America, with the Sandinistas back in power in Nicaragua, the Frente Amplio in Uruguay, Lula in Gilma in Brazil, and of course the Bolivarian Revolution spearheaded by the Venezuelans, the leadership of Hugo Chavez. So Diego Maradona, more than any other athlete of our time, perhaps you'd have to go back to a Muhammad Ali to strike this type of comparison of an athlete who truly defended the interests of the underdog.
Very interesting stuff, Danny. Just finally, Argentina declares 3 days of national mourning. Very iconic figure in the country, but also loved around the world.
Yeah, millions and millions of people are heading to La Casa Rosada, the White House of Buenos Aires of Argentina. Alberto Fernandez, the president of Argentina, is expecting millions of people. So this has really been a tremendous, not just a sports loss, but a political loss. And it's so important to get this information out because, of course, the mainstream will say that Diego Maradona hates the United States and hates the people of the United States, which is completely false. Just as it's false about Nicolas Maduro and Rafael Correa and all of the revolutionary governments in Latin America. They don't have anything against the people of the U.S. They're against the political class and the ruling class of the U.S. that has subjected Latin America and the quote-unquote third world countries to immiseration and exploitation for so long. And a lot of the mainstream sources won't want to deal with this other side of Maradona. They'll just want to focus on his famous exploits on the soccer pitch. So it's important that we share the true legacy of this fallen warrior who departed today at the age of 60.
Mr. Shaw, as always, thank you very much indeed. Professor Danny Shaw of Latin American and Caribbean Studies.